Oh, hi, it's your old buddy Zoo, and today we're talking about a problem that affects a lot of middle-aged men. EB. That's right, an expanding backlog. What the hell you think I was talking about? We've all got a backlog, either in Steam, one of those backlog tracking websites, maybe even a spreadsheet, maybe even a fancy color-coded Excel file. Maybe it's sorted by playtime or ranked on a tier list you've gone back to a couple times. Maybe you saw a game in a YouTube video, you said, boy, I should play that, only to discover it's been in your library for 4 years. I used to be like that. I used to spend a lot more time thinking about playing games than actually playing games. That spreadsheet or the website or whatever, it's not helping you play games. It's making you think you're being more productive than you actually are. There's a difference there, a big one actually, and it took me a while to figure that out. So today we're going to talk about how backlog organization is a trap.
It's a trap!
And I'll tell you what actually works instead. Just to start off, having a lot of games isn't a problem. I don't think backlog guilt is a real thing. You bought those games. You're allowed to own the games. It's fine. The issue is what happens when you actually open up your library and try to pick a game to play. You open your library, you got 40, 80, hell, even maybe 4,300 games. And suddenly your brain, it just goes offline. You scroll, you read through descriptions you've read a dozen times before. You almost pick something, but then you stop yourself because, maybe I'm not in the mood for that game today. Maybe right now I want something a little bit longer. Or maybe I want something shorter. Maybe I want a game I can pick up and play for 20 minutes and then put back down. Except 20 minutes later, you're watching someone else play a game on YouTube and you still haven't made a decision. And the issue is even worse with these things, these retro handhelds that can show up at your house with 10, maybe 20,000 games preloaded. You fire them up, you tweak the settings, you change your shaders, maybe you sign into retro achievements, maybe you play 1 or 2 games, then you get bored with it. You gotta chase the next hot thing. And the name for what's happening is called decision fatigue. It's not a character flaw or a personality defect. It's just basic psychology. The more options you have, the more mental energy it takes to choose from those options. And the more mental energy it takes to actually make a decision, the more likely you are to not make a decision at all. Psychologists call it the paradox of choice. I call it the reason why I've owned Hollow Knight for almost a decade now, and I've played it for a grand total of 45 minutes. And here's where the spreadsheet thing comes back around, because while you're making a tier list of all your NES games, while you're adding metadata and screenshots and all sorts of accoutrements, you're actually just adding more decisions to make. Instead of making the decision easier, you're making it harder. Instead of picking from 400 games, now you're picking from 400 games with metadata attached to them. The bottleneck in this whole process was never about organizing your games, it was about committing to playing them. So what actually helps, Zoo? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the answer is pretty easy, and it is constraints. We just did a whole video on this with the ROG Rotate last week, but constraints, paradoxically, are much more helpful than you would think when it comes to stuff like this. And I know that sounds backwards because we spend so much energy trying to keep our options open. You know, we wish list games, we wait until there's a big summer sale and we buy a bunch of stuff. We do all that because more options feels like more freedom. But when it comes to decision making, more options are actually just friction in the machine. And the fewer choices you have in the moment, the easier it is to start. Just like last week when we talked about renting games, think back to when you were a kid and you had a very limited set of options. Maybe the only game you had for a better part of a year was Secret of Mana or something you got for your birthday. You would play it endlessly. You would master every stage, every board, every map, every secret, and you had a blast. And think about the last couple games you've finished as an adult. I mean, games you really engaged with, games you went all the way from the beginning to the end, and you had a good time. I bet in a lot of those cases, something nudged you towards it. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was a group of friends. Maybe you were killing time on a trip and it was the only thing you had loaded on your device. Maybe a sale was ending. Something happened, but it narrowed the field for you. You kind of were forced, you were constrained to play that game, and by God, you actually did it. And you did it because all of the work of choosing was done for you. You didn't need better organization, you just needed someone or something to pick a game for you. And so let's talk about a couple ways where you can commit to finishing games from your backlog. First up is a randomizer. There are apps and websites that will literally pick a game from your Steam library completely at random, and you don't have to negotiate. It just picks it for you and you go, all right, I guess that's what we're playing today. It sounds almost too simple to work, and yet it does. Removing your own agency is kind of the point when you're stuck in your backlog. Your brain stops looking for reasons to delay because there are no more reasons. There's no more options. There's no more choices. Just the game that you've put in front of you. And the only question that's left is if you're going to give it an hour or two before you quit, which, give it an hour or two, especially with modern games. Get past the tutorial into a little bit of the meat and potatoes of the game. Just give it an honest-to-God fair shake. Another thing that works really well is giving yourself a theme for a week or for a month or for a quarter and sticking to it. Maybe October is horror games. Maybe February you decide to go all JRPGs. Maybe you see the Dragon Quest 40th anniversary announcement and decide to play all the mainline Dragon Quest games in order. Whatever. Pick a theme and go with it. Instead of choosing from your entire library, at least now you're choosing from a subset of your library, a smaller pool of decisions for your overworked brain to make. Some people will do this by platform. So this month, we're only doing Game Boy games. Next month, we're doing Neo Geo Pocket games. Heck, let's do Sega September while we're at it. And that works because anything that kind of artificially narrows the field for you is getting you on the right path. And then the third option, my personal favorite, is what we do over in the RH Discord, is have a Game of the Month club. Every month, our Discord community picks 3 games to play. One from pre-96, one from 96 to 2002, and one from 2002 onward. The games all need to be on theme, which is also voted on, and then we play the games and we discuss the games and we yell at each other on the Discord and we all have a merry time. We also have shorter games of the week, which, weirdly enough, refresh every week, and then we have games of the quarter, which are theoretically for giant-ass RPGs that you really shouldn't try to squeeze into 1 month. So regardless of your level of free time, there's going to be something there for you to play. And it's great. I've been a part of it for over 3 years now. And what makes it work is the social accountability. When you know other people are playing the same game and there's conversations, there's hints, there's gripes, there's shared grievances, there's shared heartbreak over Stovecat. Suddenly you have a reason to play these games that you didn't have before. It's not just you and your library alone. There's a bunch of other people out there on the internet, and they're counting on you. And it's cool because we've had people in our Discord play games from genres they never would have touched with an 11-foot pole, and surprise, surprise, some of the time, they love those games, and they discover an entire new subset of games that they could be playing, which ironically adds to their backlog issue, but I digress. Taking away the decision helps with that. The group energy pushing you forward helps with that, and you don't get that when you're sitting in your room by yourself looking at a tier list at 11 o'clock at night and going, well, maybe I should play it, but it is 11. I don't want to start a game. Maybe tomorrow, and then tomorrow becomes the next week, and then the next week becomes the next month, and you never play the game. I like to treat our Game of the Month group as akin to a book club, which means there have to be rules. You don't want to talk about World War Z and have 3 or 4 people come in who've only seen the movie, because guess what? It is radically different than the book. And that happens with the game sometimes. And since our Game of the Month club nets you points you can use for some sweet swag, there is always the impetus for some people to try to pick 3 super short games so they can get 3 super easy points. But all in all, it's a pretty solid group, and you need a solid group to hold yourself accountable. Now I feel like I'm talking in an AA meeting, but it is kind of the same principle. You need a group of people to kind of push you towards a common goal. I don't know, I think that's beautiful. And me personally, between the weekly games and the monthly games and the quarterly games, I finished close to 400 games. And a lot of those games are probably ones I never would have touched without Game of the Month kind of pushing me along. Just something to consider. Well, Gary, the clock on the wall says it's time for What Did We Learn? And we learned that a well-organized backlog is just a beautiful list that will do absolutely nothing to get you to finish a game. Because the problem was never the list, the problem was making the decision, and the solution is to take the decision out of your hands. We learned that no matter how you go about making a commitment, a randomizer, setting themes for yourself, joining Game of the Month, discord.gg/retrohandhelds, whatever, the goal is the same. You just need to make that commitment before, so that in the moment, you can't back out of it. You can't go, I really don't want to play this game right now. Because too bad. You got to play it. You got to get your point. You got to get your sweet Zoo Reviews hoodie. Or I guess a Rob Oh No one if you're not a fan. But who couldn't be a fan of this ruggedly handsome fellow here? And we learned that your backlog isn't a problem waiting to be organized. It's a library you haven't visited yet. So, I guess go visit it, you dope. If you think I'm a dope, I'm sorry. If you don't think I'm a dope, remember to like and subscribe and all that jazz. We're so close to 100,000 subs. Ooh, I really want that plaque. Please, won't you help me get that cool plaque? Maybe I'll hang it up back there. Maybe put it over my fireplace for Christmas. Won't that be fun? Confuse my in-laws. Anyway, I put links to everything we talked about in the video description, including a link to our Discord where you can, of course, join our Game of the Month Club. It's super cool, it's super fun, except if you do vote against one of my tactical RPGs,
you will draw my ire and enmity forever.
But what's life without a few risks, huh? Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.